So today is our 10th morning Mikdash moment Shir. So welcome back to all of the familiar faces and welcome to all of our new participants. Today's discussion, we're going to continue on the discussion of the Mizbeach. Yesterday we discussed the construction, the design of the Mizbeach and the various levels that the Mizbeach was made up of. So today we're going to discuss the kevesh, the ramp which was used to ascend the Mizbeach. As we mentioned yesterday, the Mizbeach was quite tall. The Mizbeach stood approximately 10 amas tall in total, meaning that the top level of the Mizbeach minus its horns was 9 amas, so approximately 4.5 meters above the ground. And the Kohanim would need to go up the Mizbeach to transport, to place the pieces of the korbanos, the sacrifices, onto the fires, to place wood onto the fires, and of course, to stoke the coals and to do the avodah. So they needed to be able to climb up. And the Torah tells us in the mitzvah of the Mizbeach tells us, you should not go up on stairs, on steps to my Mizbeach, in order that you do not expose your nakedness upon it. So from this pasuk, we learned that it was forbidden for the Kohanim to climb up the Mizbeach on any form of stairs or of steps. And the reason is if they would have to take steps, it would necessitate lifting up their legs to higher as they climbed those stairs. And in doing so, they would expose their legs. And exposing their legs, their nakedness, would have been an embarrassment, so to speak, to the Mizbeach, would have been disrespectful to the Mizbeach. And therefore, the Torah tells us not to do so. And indeed, Rashi, one of the greatest commentators, tells us that from this we can learn an insight in our interpersonal dealings as well. That the Mizbeach ramp was made of stone. The Mizbeach was made of stones and of cement. And if the Torah was so concerned about the embarrassment of stone, something inanimate, something which doesn't really have feelings, and says that one should not do anything which would embarrass or shame or show disregard for even stones, how much more so we need to be wary in our interactions with others, not to do anything which would either show shame or disdain to another. We need to be aware of other people's feelings. So instead, obviously, they couldn't climb up with stairs. So instead, they would climb up a ramp. The Hebrew word for the ramp, the word used in the Torah is kevesh. Now, I'll bring up a slide where we can have a look at some of the details of this kevesh. So here you have a side view. It's a side view, as you can see on the right of your screen, the Mizbeach itself with its 3 levels. At the base, you have the Yesoid, that's the lowest block. Then you have the Soivev in the middle, and that is topped off by the Menachem HaMaracha at the top, on which the fires would be lit. So the ramp needed to go all the way up to that level. The ramp was constructed to the south side of the Mizbeach, and it would ascend to the top. So if you have a look over here to some of the details, the ramp of the Mizbeach was 32 amos in length. So 32 amos is approximately 16 meters in length. And on the ground, it was 30 amos consumed on the ground to the south of the Mizbeach was 30 amos. And you then also had an additional 2 amos, because as we said before, the Mizbeach was built in a way that it went in at 2 points, at this Yesoid at the base, and then again at the Soivev, the ledge, just above the midway point of the Mizbeach. So on the ground, whilst it was 30 amos, but then there was an additional 2 amos where the Mizbeach was constructed to hover over both the ledge and the Soivev and the Yesoid, the base of the Mizbeach, which you can see then highlighted over there. Interesting enough, the Mizbeach, the ramp was not built attached to the Mizbeach. It did not join the Mizbeach at the top. There was a small, tiny gap at the top. And we learned that from a number of details. One is that it says, Saviv, the one must be able to walk around the Mizbeach, which means that there cannot be anything right up against the Mizbeach which would prevent going all the way around. Now, whilst obviously a person can't get through such a size crack, but nonetheless, the fact that it was separate means that one can have the theoretical concept of Saviv, that one can go around the entire Mizbeach at the top. Additionally, that the pieces of the korbanos had to be thrown onto the Mizbeach with the way of Zrika, and therefore by having that separation was to bring out that idea that one would have to throw the parts of the korban onto the Mizbeach. So, in terms of the height, as we mentioned before, the height of the Mizbeach was 9 amos. Now, because some of those amos were made up of 5 tefach amos, one of them was at least, therefore, The height at this point is 8 amos and 5 tvachim. So the Kohen needed to climb up there, and he would climb up the ramp, he would climb up the kevesh. That is known as the major ramp of the Mizbeach. As we saw yesterday, there were two minor ramps. The two minor ramps did not go to the very top of the Mizbeach. Instead, they went to the soivev, they went to that ledge that the Kohen would then walk around to place the blood onto the Mizbeach. So just to share a couple of ideas about this idea of the ramp and perhaps some of the lessons that we could learn from it. So the pasuk says, "V'loisale b'malois al mizbechi." We quoted that verse. Why is it that they had to have a ramp to climb up to the Mizbeach? Why couldn't you use stairs or steps? Because the pasuk itself says it's a gezeres hakasuv, it's a mitzvah in the Torah. You should not ascend with steps upon my Mizbeach. And the reason the Torah gives is asher lo tegala ervascha alav, that you should not reveal your nakedness upon it. You should not show your nakedness. And this is one of the lavim, this is one of the 365 negative mitzvahs of the Torah. And as we said, that is why there had to be a ramp. So what's the inner message over here? We know that the Mizbeach represents the service of Hashem, just as the Mizbeach is where they would bring the karbanos, the sacrifices in the service of Hashem. Therefore, the Mizbeach represents our own personal avodas Hashem, our own personal service of Hashem as well. And what we want to do is we want to climb that Mizbeach. We want to climb and elevate in our service of Hashem. So the Torah tells us that when we climb up the Mizbeach, when we climb in our service of Hashem, we should not go up with ma'alos. So this is the idea that the Baal Shem Tov explains. The word ma'alos can mean, it comes from the word oile, to go up, and it's used to refer to stairs or steps. But ma'alos can also refer to a person's strengths and qualities, or a person's accomplishments. We talk about a person's milas, a person's strengths and their qualities, and that is because a person's qualities and strengths, they elevate that person, and therefore we refer to them as milos. So what the Baal Shem Tov is telling us is as follows. When it comes to climbing the Mizbeach of Avodas Hashem, when it comes to climbing the Mizbeach in our service of Hashem, the way to do that is not by focusing on our spiritual strengths and our qualities and our accomplishments. We don't focus on our milas. And the question is why? Surely that's a good thing. It's a good thing to be aware of our spiritual qualities. It's a good thing to be aware of our milas. Why does the Torah tell us that when we want to climb the Mizbeach of Avodas Hashem, one should not focus on their milas? And the pasuk tells us the reason is asher lo tegala ervascha alav, that yes, a person should know their strengths. And one would think that focusing on our spiritual strength is a good thing. However, when a person makes an inner reflection and looks at their spiritual accomplishments and makes an ascertaining where exactly we are standing in our service of Hashem. So in fact, what it could lead to is the opposite, that instead of focusing and noticing and being aware of our spiritual strengths, that could lead us instead to focus on our nakedness. It could cause us to focus that in fact we are spiritually naked and lacking, and that we don't really possess any lofty spiritual qualities or accomplishments to boast of. And obviously the danger in doing that is when a person feels that they are spiritually low and they feel that they're spiritually naked, that they don't have any strengths and qualities and accomplishments to speak of, then that leads to feelings of inadequacy, that leads to feelings of lowliness, and can lead to feelings of feeling deficient. And when a person feels that way, then they feel unworthy of being able to serve Hashem. Or in the words of the Alter Rebbe, the person may think, mi ani, umma ani, who am I and what am I, like Yeshes el HaKodesh, to come close, to draw closer to Hashem, that I'm so spiritually lowly, I have all of these deficiencies and lackings, and how am I able to serve Hashem, who is the creator of all? So therefore the Baal Shem Tov says, that is the reason the Torah tells us, you should not go up with stairs, you should not focus on your spiritual strengths and accomplishments, because in doing so, it could lead you to uncover your nakedness and to expose how the fact is we may be spiritually impoverished, we may be inadequate and unworthy, and then we would not feel that we're able to climb the Mizbeach at all. We would feel that we're ineligible or unworthy to be able to climb up and serve Hashem. And the message is a very powerful idea. Is first of all, it brings out the idea of humility, that we don't focus on our steps, we don't focus on our qualities and accomplishments, but also it means that even if a person is in a lowly level, where they don't have spiritual accomplishments or qualities to be aware of or to boast of, nonetheless, Hashem says that despite how lowly you are and how lowly you may feel and how inadequate spiritually you may feel, Hashem says, I want you to climb my Mizbeach. I still want you to serve me, and I value your service. I value the mitzvahs that you do. So the question is, if we do feel spiritually inadequate, if we feel low inside, if we feel uninspired, if we feel that we don't have spiritual accomplishments, how do we then in fact climb the Mizbeach of Avodas Hashem? And the answer is that instead of steps, we climb up a kevesh, a ramp. This word, which is used for kevesh, is an interesting word. Kevesh, on one hand, yes, it means a ramp, but kevesh comes from the word kovesh or kibush, which means to conquer over somebody. So the message that the Torah is telling us is that when we feel spiritually inadequate, when we feel spiritually low, when we feel down, when we feel unworthy, so our feelings could throw us off and feel that we can't approach Hashem. So the answer is that we need to conquer ourselves. Kevesh, we need to conquer ourselves. We need to conquer these feelings of inadequacy. We need to push them away. We need to push them out of our minds. And instead, we need to throw ourselves into the avodah. We need to throw ourselves and go up that ramp with that strength to serve Hashem. So even if we feel like a fake inside, even if we feel that we're not actually spiritually worthy, even if we feel we're not deserving of being able to serve Hashem, nonetheless, the idea of the kevesh, the strength of the conqueror, means that we fake it, even if we're faking it, and we find the inner strength to keep the mitzvahs of Hashem, because that's what Hashem wants of us. That it's not about thinking about ourselves. Just as we don't think about our milas, we don't think about our qualities in an arrogant way, but the flip side is to think about our deficiencies, which is a sense of insecurity or inadequacy or low self-esteem. In both cases, we're thinking about ourselves. Obviously, the arrogance of focusing on one's qualities, one is thinking about themselves. But on the flip side, when a person feels inferior and thinks about their inadequacies and their insecurities, it's thinking about yourself as well. What Hashem says, it's not about you. It's not about your feelings of adequacy or inadequacy. I want you to serve me. I want you to climb my Mizbeach. And I want you to serve me. And that is the idea of Kabbalas Ol. That even if we don't feel worthy, it's not about our feelings. It's about what Hashem wants us to do. And therefore, when we go like the kevesh, when we conquer ourselves, when we conquer our feelings of unworthiness, then we are able to climb up to the top of the Mizbeach and sacrifice ourselves and bring ourselves to the service of Hashem. And ultimately, through this kevesh, we will be successful in climbing to the top of the Mizbeach. We will get there because we don't let either our feelings of inadequacy hold us back. We don't let the fact that we might feel spiritually unworthy hold us back. Instead, we just march head on and we climb that ramp and we're able to reach the top of the ladder. So that's the idea that the Baal Shem Tov teaches based on this pasuk. And of course, there are many more ideas that we could share about the kevesh, the ramp, and how it applies in Avodas Hashem. But we are out of time. Erev Shabbos is a busy day. And Be'ezras Hashem, we can share some of these ideas in our shir next week. So thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful Shabbos to everybody. And we'll see you again next week. Be'ezras Hashem.
Good Shabbos, Rabbi. Thank you.
Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbos.